Good to be here. Very crazy tool. There are like new tools all the time, and it's a very exciting one. We have basically one part where we'll talk a little bit through the PM skill matrix, and then we're gonna have a discussion mid presentation, and then I have a second part, and then we're gonna have a discussion again, and then we meet in the casino. That's the agenda for today. I'm coming to that in a second. So just briefly about myself, I'm from Austria. I started web design and web engineering during school. I had a restaurant during university time. We opened up like slightly upper class restaurant in Vienna. Plus we developed first tablet-based ordering system in Austria. So that was my first actual product I built. And at that time I fell in love with building digital solutions. I then moved to Berlin and worked as first product manager and then later head of product at N26 for about 3 years, or exactly 3 years, which was a very exciting journey and something where I took a lot of learnings from and started this skill matrix that I will share today with you. In between, I did a couple of interim jobs and then ended up at Cirque, electric kick scooter sharing, very similar to N26. I joined them as the first product manager or product leader and build up the tech team from the ground. Also a very interesting product to work on, but because it's also hardware, we did a lot of internal software for fleet management and other purposes. So also a quite interesting one I might reference at some point. And in my private life, I'm actually a nerd. I love computer gaming. I love board gaming. I just recently brought my own board game to Kickstarter. I love live action role play, as you can see in the right hand corner. I love to travel. So that's a little bit about my private side. And I'm currently working as a coach and consultant with a portfolio of about 20 different clients, helping them, some very regularly, some very ad hoc, in different questions around product management. And at some point later this year, I want to start my own my proper company again, not a board game or freelance thing. But right now it's what fits best to my private lifestyle. So overview for today, I first will introduce to you this product management skill matrix that I've been working on for the last 5 years. And I'm currently writing an article on that and want to publish this and want more input from more people. I want to share this with folks out there. Then we're gonna have a break, and then I'll talk how you can use the matrix as a leader and how you can use it for personal development. Give you some concrete examples of how I have done that in the last years. Hope that's clear so far, because then I'm very happy to jump in telling you more about this product skill matrix. And this, I actually have the fourth iteration of this product, if you want to call it a product, by now. And I decided in that last iteration to go with the approach that I got inspired from Marty Kagan on splitting it by people, product, and process. Initially, I had it more process focused, not so much people and product focused, but at the end, I decided that that's a good split. And I've read a lot of different articles on product management skills. So you will see some Kagan stuff there. You will see some stuff from Teresa Torres, some things from blog articles or Medium articles I don't even know the authors from. So I have basically taken a lot of stuff from others, rearranged it a little bit. And so it's obviously a lot of credits to all the product folks out there who are doing, like, putting a lot of brain thoughts into that as well. So on the product knowledge side, I have split it into 5 skills basically around user and customer knowledge, data knowledge, industry and domain knowledge, business and company knowledge, and product operational knowledge. I won't go deep into each of these sections because it's not the purpose of today's session that I explain all the skills. I'll share the skill matrix with you afterwards where you can go deep into it yourself, understand it and maybe use it for yourself, make your own iteration version of it. I want to give you an overview of what it is and particularly tell you how I use it as a leader with my team or as a coach and consultant with others. So for this purpose, I just give you a quick overview of how it's structured and organized and why I decided to structure and organize it that way. When it comes to people skills, I organized around 5 core skills again, which is evangelism skills, leadership skills, communication, probably the key skill for me in this area, stakeholder management, which has some communication components, obviously, and team collaboration. And on the process part, I have actually only 4 steps, not 5, because these are the 4 major steps in the product management process I consider being crucial. First, strategizing, discovery, delivery, and optimization. I'll come to this in a second with a little bit more detail. Those are called process techniques, basically. And some of these skills I have broken down further because I felt that they are not detailed enough. And that was very, very hard to say kind of where to draw the line. For some skills, I feel it's enough on that level. So at the end, the whole skill matrix has 24 skills. Here you see only 14. So I have broken down some of these skills into sub-skills. So the data skill, for example, I decided to split it in 2 sub-parts. One is data gathering and analysis, and the second is then generating insights and recommendations. So one really like understanding what data I have and where to get this data and how to analyze it and then making sense of data. These are kind of, I want to split that more clearly. And on the user and customer side, I decided to split it in 2 again. One is user empathy and then the segmentation that results from that. And the other is the stronger aspect of customer discovery and research, where you try to like learn about who are those customers, how do you generate insights, which techniques do you use to generate these insights. While the first is more on, okay, do I even understand who is that customer and how do I segment that customer? Obviously, those are quite closely connected. If you look into the matrix, I think it will make sense. But again, I think there's not the one solution. This is just one approach. So that's why you might want to change aspects along this way. When it comes to process, that's one thing I want to spend a minute more on, just to like help you on my thinking here. When I talk about strategizing, I see here the first 2 aspects of strategizing, which is first opportunity assessment. There are so many things out there, so many ideas coming from many fronts, teams, stakeholders, partners, but also like new insights that you generate through customer discovery, for example. And the key skill that I realize in that field is like, you need to do a quick assessment and then draft a hypothetical roadmap out of it. Putting into, like, I usually put in like next, late, like now, next, later, not in the next 6 months, this type of high level roadmap. But I see so many teams when I consult and work with them that have either they have not even they don't differentiate between backlog and roadmap. For them, it's all the same. Like they have the Jira backlog and there are like huge ideas, big projects, empty tickets, and then there are like super detailed user stories and tasks and stuff. So that's one thing. So I think you should really have that separate. And the second that I see is that like in the roadmaps, there's such a long list of different ideas that they want, like the team and the PMs want to do discovery on that, but they can't because there's so many things and they don't have time. And that's why I say like this first step, the strategizing, is like a triage process in a hospital. When you go to an emergency hospital, someone will look at you and say, okay, you need to like go to the emergency room immediately. You need to go under surgery now. Or you're okay, you can wait for 3 hours, or you can wait for 8 hours, or you can go home and come in like 2 days or something. So they're doing a triaging depending on how like urgent it is to look at you and like take a surgery or execute something on you. And I see that similar in that strategizing field where say you have so many inputs, you need to do a quick assessment based on gut feeling, based on some input that you have, and particularly based on the goals and objectives that the company has. and then put that in order so you can then understand what do I run a proper product discovery about. And this is step 2, is like I have pre-selected some topics and I run a discovery on that. And discovery I have sliced into 3 parts. Obviously you could slice it differently. Problem research and definition, solution design and validation, and then the business modeling part of that, which is important for new products, maybe not for every feature, but I wanted to highlight this here as well. So discovery for me here is everything from, okay, I have pre-selected a topic I want to go deeper into, up to the point that I either decide, okay, we're gonna work on this with the engineering team and implement something, or we drop it. And I think by now the term product discovery became quite popular in our space. And then obviously product delivery being around very long, some referring as being the Scrum or Agile processes. I have split that in 4: Agile development and execution methods, technology and design understanding. So basically understanding from the other 2 core aspects you're working with, backlog management, and then rollout and launch management. And then once you have launched the product, obviously optimization techniques around, again, data gathering and feedback gathering, which is slightly different than the data part up there, because here it's specifically connected with data regarding to your specific launch that you just had, what data do I look at. That's different than like looking in general and like data patterns, etc. And then continuous experimentation. So experimentation I also see being part of 2 aspects. You have a lot of experimentation in the discovery phase when you do problem research and solution validation. But you also have experimentation methods and experimentation in the optimization phase. When you say, okay, I want to optimize on a given product. So that's the whole process side. And in the people skill side, I also broke down 2 further. One is the evangelism skill, where I see 2 core parts. One is being an evangelist for your product vision and strategy. And the second is being an evangelist for product management methodologies and the product management mindset in your company, in your product team, in your tech organization. And I've also broken down leadership into 2 further like subparts, because there are 2 very different types of leadership as a product manager. You're a cross-functional leader of your Scrum team or Agile team or squad or whatever you want to call it. So you're a cross-functional lead, so a leader without authority. And might be, depending on what position you are, you might be a functional people manager. So you might be responsible for more junior product managers, for designers, researchers, or even engineers. And that's a very different type of leadership and leadership practices that you need to learn. And you're very early in your career, you're a cross-functional lead, but rather late in the career, you're like a functional leader. So that's the 24 skills basically. So basically you take from every skill that I have not broken down in details, you take those on the first level and then everything on the second level. And that makes up the matrix. That's my basic core thought. And before I go deeper, I want to cover 2-3 things that sometimes people mix up. They ask me like, what do you think about product manager, product owner? You always talk about this. For me, I follow here, Teresa Torres has an amazing article on this, and I'm absolutely sharing what she's saying. And I think Marty Kagan has the same approach. I don't believe in the split of product manager, product owner type of thing. Product owner is a role that many product managers also fill. I know in large organizations, sometimes they have a delivery manager and then they call him product owner, but then I rather call them delivery manager. And I know that some organizations like Amazon or Zalando have a stronger split between discovery and delivery, like product managers own this discovery and they have delivery manager owning delivery, and it also works and builds great product. But I still would then rather differentiate on that term to not mix it up too much. So in this case, my thinking behind this matrix is product manager and product owner is basically the same. So product owner is a role of the product manager. Let's put it like this. Then another question I often get is B2C versus B2B. I think working with a lot of different clients and different industries, there's the core practices, the core skills, core mindset doesn't differentiate so much. There are differences in the experimentation methods you can use. particularly when you go like larger clients, enterprise clients. Some experimentation methods might fit very well for consumer businesses, but are not applicable in B2B, or vice versa. Some are more B2B focused. So there are nuances in the techniques, particularly around discovery, and probably also around customer research and the user side. Maybe a little bit on the data that you look at, because you have other quantities of data. But at the end of the day, the core is like 90% the same. So I think you make some adjustments if you want, but basically I would say like there's not too much of a difference here. And the third question I want to cover before showing you what this skill matrix actually is like, people always ask me, are all skills for all types of PMs applicable? Of course, there might be particularly large organizations, there might be very specialized, highly specialized product managers, such as we had in N26 or also CERC, product managers that own the platform. And they're like making sure that a couple of platform teams develop the platform in a meaningful way. And their kind of, you could say, almost customer or their user are other product teams. Obviously, they serve also the end user through them. But and for this, some of the skills might not be as relevant for them as for other PMs. So that's why some skills might not be applicable, but I would say that's rather an exception. And maybe some skills in the research part, or if you're a very technical PM, maybe some skills on the business front might not be so important. So feel free to adjust it for your circumstances. But I would say 80% here, again, is core product management skill set. And everything else, like, there might be some nuances. And also, because it's 24 skills, I think it shows how broad our craft of product management is and how hard it is to master. I think no PM will be excellent in all of the 24 skills. I think it's impossible. So you have PMs, in particular, when you build larger teams, you want to have PMs with different focus points and specialities, and saying, yeah, I have a PM here, it's more stronger on the UX front or on the business, deep into business topics or data topics or engineering. So that's fine. I think that's not something the skill matrix prevents, because you will see you have possibilities to change it. Those are 3 basics to cover before we later on go into discussion. And now I talked a lot about the skills, but I didn't show you a matrix. So what makes it a matrix are the 4 levels of product managers I distinguish in that matrix. I first have the associate PM, and I borrowed that term from probably Google or somewhere. Like, I don't like the term junior. No one wants to be a junior at first. And second, like, I've seen so many PMs transitioning to product management in their career from other jobs. Like my last associate I hired, he worked 6 years in both, like 3 years as a designer, 3 years as a PM. As an engineer. And he didn't have any professional product management experience, but he has had a lot of prior knowledge around like building products, or PMs that come from marketing or customer service or other fields. They are not a junior in their role in their career, but they are an associate as a PM, or they're a beginner product manager. And they will probably need 6 to 9, 12 months to become a fully fledged PM. So that's why I like the term associate PM a lot. And I consider most people should go through a 6 to 18 month associate period before like calling them actually a product manager. Except if you have maybe done 3 or 4 internships in product management, then it's kind of a grouped associate program. Then obviously the most of you will probably see themselves as product manager. And product manager is also very broad, because big organizations like Facebook, Google, I think even Amazon, they got rid of a lot of titles, and almost everyone is called product manager. And you can have 10 years of experience, you might have 2 years of experience, you're product manager, and you have product management on different levels in terms of salary and or sub levels of product managers. But it just keep the title very basic and said you are a product manager. That's, I think, for itself a very important one. And then I defined here, I distinguish here between product manager and lead product manager. I'm sick of the title senior because I feel everyone who has 1 year experience wants to call himself a senior. And that's why I stopped using senior in any recruiting I do and only use product manager or lead, because lead is something more clearly as differentiated between a product manager and someone who is potentially might also lead other PMs. And so you might, if you're in that group, you might be called group product manager. You might be a lead PM is becoming more popular. You might even have a different term of product manager. I would say if you're a real senior, then you will call yourself also lead PM in this sense, but not like I have 1 year experience senior. Then I think you find yourself rather than product manager but have a senior title. I've seen a lot of seniors like calling themselves senior from basically their first product management job ever. So I think there's a little bit of this dilution here. I just want to explain this to you so you can make sense of the matrix and do a proper evaluation of yourself. And the interesting thing is why I started that matrix is back in N26, I had a long discussion with 2 PMs of my team where one of them was a senior and one wasn't. And the non-senior asked me like, why am I not a senior? Like, what is different between me and her? And I actually didn't have a good answer for that. And then I told him like, hey, let's work together on a matrix. Like or he initiated it even. Like we worked, like the very first version I built with him together. So here a lot of credits to Philip as well, who helped me building that initially. And then it was much more clear for him to say, okay, now I know what I need to do to basically step up my game. And another story I want to share to just give you a little bit of a feeling of why that's important. This discussion is I entered in another company as an interim product lead and did this exercise where I'll show you with all PMs. And then one of the PMs told me after going through that, she said, I'm not a product manager, I'm probably an associate and I'm probably overpaid. And I was shocked. I thought, wow, that's self-reflection. And then at that point, I realized the self-reflection power of that simple tool, that people realize something, what is even expected from my role? What is even the expectation of my manager? And so many leaders out there don't even know what they expect from their team members. So how should they know? And that's why I really want to share this, because I have been in the blind for myself for long enough. And ever since I'm using this. And level 4 is the executive PM, which you can call head of product, director product, CPO, VP product, whatever you want. Like executive product manager, I kept it simple, 4 different levels. You might want to split it further, but that was enough most of the time. Because if you see that someone, you will see in the structure I show you, you might see that someone is an early lead or a late lead, so early executive. That's something that you can see nuances of that tool. So that's the 4 levels, and they make it a matrix combined with the 24 skills. And that's a very simple Excel Google sheet at the end of the day. So I took the 24 skills, and that's product for product knowledge, and have the 4 levels and try to describe on every of these levels, what does it mean to be an associate PM? And when I look at, for example, customer discovery and research, okay, what does that mean? You should be able to support user research in a structured way, and you should be familiar with user science tools and processes. While if you're a product manager, I expect you to prepare, run, and draw actionable conclusions of customer discovery interviews with help. And I want you to choose the correct tools to trace down user issues back to this underlying problem. So you can really go into skill and then try to understand, okay, what is being expected from me as a product manager? And again, I share this with you afterwards, so you can like make your copy and use it and change it and comment on it and give me feedback, because this is not done, it will never be done. So I won't read through all of these details because that's something you can do yourself. I have that for product knowledge. I have that for the people skills sections that I showed you. And I have that for process skills and techniques. And I will show you after a short discussion how I use this. Very concrete example, how I use it as a leader and how you can use that for yourself, that simple sheet, and how you can also give me feedback on this. That's the first part, short introduction to this. Happy to have a short break with some questions to be answered.
We have here a question from Raquel. Is an executive PM still really an executive PM or rather a product executive?
That's a very good question. I wouldn't distinguish too much here, to be honest. It's, for me, if you go through the executive column, you will see that very often says you ensure certain things. You ensure, for example, effective opportunity assessment. You're teaching and establishing best practices, principles along the whole journey. Like people throwing around titles everywhere. Like you might be head of product and you are a single PM in an organization. You might be head of product of I have been head of product with about 13 PMs at N26. Afterwards, they use the head of product title for group PMs. So and I've been a head of product, being a product manager myself at N26 with one intern. So I stepped away a little bit from the titles because it's so broad. And then I see CPOs being the only product guy in a company. And that's not really an executive. Like executive meaning here, you're leading a team of product managers. Associate, you're learning. Product manager, you are owning a big part of a product, a whole product, whatever. Your product leader, you still most likely work very operational and you are doing some hands-on things, but you most likely, or maybe already, or you're at least ready to lead other product managers. So for example, at Cirque, we've been organized in 3 tribes. I had, for example, for the consumer tech tribe, I had one product director. He was running a team himself, a squad, plus he had 2 product managers reporting to him. So he was my director for consumer product, plus so he was doing both operational and product leadership work. That's a typical product leader I would consider. And then executive is really someone who's spending most of their time managing the overall team, building the team, aligning stakeholders, working on strategy. And I think a good executive will always try to keep a little bit of a hands-on work themselves, at least when the organization allows that, to show the team that they still know their craft.
Another question from Martin. He was wondering, do you have a recommendation for building each skill? Like, how do I build the skill, run assessments of new opportunities?
I will come to this a little later on how to build skills. I have previously also started a column here in the right hand corner, like how to learn that skill, because some skills can be built in a better way through, like most skills you need to practice, but some skills you can support by reading, some skills you can support by reflection with peers, some skills you can support with maybe doing a course, online course or something. I generally don't believe in you do 3 online courses and then you're a good product manager. I think product management is something you need to do for some time to become good at. And I'm also teaching product management at Code University here in Berlin for about 3 years now. And I think that's one of the only real education programs where I consider that you might be even a product manager after you're done with this. It's a 3 years program. You're a 3 years bachelor. You build 5 products from scratch. You have a lot of hands-on experience. It's not just 2 weeks, 3 weeks on the side. I get a little bit of input course. And then you consider yourself a product manager. So overall, I would say it's always practice plus reflection. And reflection can come from many different angles: reading, peer exchange, courses, or some other sources. And I'm working on this to put a list of sources for each skill together. That will be after I have published this whole thing. That's something I want to work on, maybe with support of the crowd and community. Cool. Then let me briefly tell you how I use this as a leader, and then again come to the point how you can use it as an individual. So when you introduce this into your organization, start by preparing the team, because that might be a bit overwhelming at first. So the first thing is to create a shared understanding. So that the one method that worked quite well for me is like sharing that skill matrix with the team, then having a 1 hour workshop where everyone can ask questions, where we align on terminology. What does discovery mean? What does road mapping mean? What does opportunity assessment mean? What is functional? What is cross-functional leadership? Like aligning on the terminology in that organization before you start like assessing anything. So create a shared understanding. That's something you need to do as a leader. Can be one-on-one or in a group workshop. Then you align with the team on adjustments you want to make. So maybe there's some good input from the team where they say, hey, we call this differently in our company. Or we don't think we need this skill in our company for whatever reason. Or we don't want to differentiate between those two skills. Make your adjustments, make it your own, so that the team also feels that's their product. It's not something forced on them. And then you can do a team-based assessment. So for example, you can take the matrix, or you can also take the visualization, and you can do a dot voting and say, okay, you have green dots and red dots, and you give everyone 5 dots, green, and 5 red dots, and tell them like put the green dots on the skills you think we as a team are best in, and put the red dots on where you think we are worst in. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it could be kind of writing all skills on a Miro board or a whiteboard, and then having basically a very good to not good scoring basically. So you do a team-based assessment. There are different methods you can use for this. So you as a team together create a shared understanding of where you as a team have gaps. So that can help you in recruiting, but it can also help to be like if the team overall says we are not good yet at customer discovery, or we're not yet good in opportunity assessment, then it's also easier for an individual to admit that they're not yet good at this, if they know that the whole team expressed this as a weakness. So this is a soft starting point for people to get somehow engaged with this whole thing. You don't have to do it. I'm just telling you that can be very valuable. Then you can get into action. And one use case you can use it for is recruiting. So when you want to use that skill matrix for recruiting, you can first, as I mentioned, you can identify skill gaps. So you might go through like new candidates and see, okay, could these new candidates help us close gaps by sharing knowledge internally, etc. Second, it can help you to improve your job description. I suggest to run through the job description, see are all core skills covered, like more or less covered. Like you won't have 24 lines, but I'm usually going through a job description, just checking against the skill matrix and see, okay, did we cover the core essential points? Third, you can align it with your hiring process. So I see in so many organizations, hiring process in product management or in general being so messed up. People ask the same question all the time. For some skills, no questions been asked. So what you can do is you can, next to the skill matrix, you can write names and say, okay, Hannes is taking care of skill number 2 and 3. Lisa is taking skill number 5, 8, and 9. And she's assessing those skills. And she will come up with good questions and small cases how to assess this person on that given skill. So it can really help you structure your hiring process much more, and also maybe your hiring scoring card could be aligned with that skill matrix. So feel free to ramp up your hiring process by using this. And yeah, as I mentioned, by mapping interviewers and skills, so you can also map at the end when you go through your candidates, you can say, let's look through our skill, maybe through a couple of skills that are particularly important for us, maybe because we want to keep them on the high level they are that we currently have them, or we want to fill a gap. So you can double check again whether the interviewee where the interview stands in terms of a given skill. And as I mentioned, you can use it to adjust your assessment matrix. So that's one way, recruiting. Another approach how you can use this as a leader in your organization is you can use it as a framework for coaching, career development, and performance management. I believe a lot of good leaders are also coaches, but still performance management plays a big role as well. So if I use that as a performance tool, I first make sure I align on the process with my coachee or employee. What this means is I basically explain them the steps I outlined to you in the next 5 minutes. I explain this to them to make sure they understand the process and that's all clear to them. Second, and that's the probably most important and exciting part of the whole thing, self-assessment and leader assessment. I ask the employee or coachee to self-assess them on one of the 4 levels. We agree on the level, we say, okay, maybe you look at the product manager level. I know you want to soon jump to the next level. Let's first make sure we have the product manager level set up. You can obviously take always a sneak peek to the right to see, okay, what would be the next expectation. You can already score that for some of the skills if you want to, but let's focus on one of the 4. Or maybe it's associate, or maybe it's the lead level, or maybe if you're CEO in your organization, you want to use that to assess your product leader or your product executive. So you ask your employee to do a self-assessment, and you also do an assessment. I usually use this as the opportunity to do a 360 degrees. So I collect feedback from a couple of peers, team members, stakeholders, maybe customers, other management folks. So I get their input, so I get a really good picture on that person. And the way we do that is basically we take the sheet, we create a copy, so we both have a copy, and then I go, for example, here through the product manager track. And I mark every quadrant here, or every cell, every field with a color. And I use that very simple color system here down in the right. Gray is not applicable or not expected or can't be scored. Not applicable because for that specific technical product manager, it's not expected or not applicable. Or it can be scored because we haven't done this in our company at all. For example, user research. So you might be good at it, but I cannot even say because we haven't done any research yet. So I cannot judge it. So then I make it gray. Red is expectation not met. Yellow is below expectation. Blue is at expectation. Green is above expectation. I keep it as simple as that. And expectation means expectation of the company on that role. And the expectation of the company is represented through the leader. So in this case, I'm as a head of product, I'm assessing a product manager. So I am representing the expectation of the company towards that manager. And so obviously in the self-assessment, that person tries to understand based on my expectations as a leader, am I exceeding their expectation or aligning with their expectation or below their expectation? What do I think? I do. And I love the term expectation because it makes clear that it is not, you can't make it entirely fact-based. It is somewhat subjective to the given person. And it's not perfectly objective. And you as a leader might have too crazy, like your expectation might be too crazy, or you might be really bad in expressing your expectations so that others don't know what they expect, what you expect. But at least you have something to start with. Because what is good, very bad, how to judge this? So I love to talk about expectations. And so at the end, the product manager has a sheet with these colors filled out, and I, as a product leader, have the same. I have a copy, and I also fill out with the colors and think, okay, where does this person stand? Where are their gaps? How does it align? And you might ask the question now, because in the skill matrix, oftentimes I don't say what is good and what is bad. It says, for example, able, like here in customer discovery and research, prepare, run, and draw actionable conclusions of customer interviews with help. But it doesn't say, how does this look like if it's very good, if it's good, or if it's below expectation or below at expectation, etc. So you could say, if you want to make that matrix even crazier, you could, behind every box, you could basically put what would that skill mean at every level of expectation. And that would go beyond everything you could manage. However, I have a solution for you that if you have these struggles and say, I don't know whether that person is good in communication or not, and I feel that person is not good in communication, but I don't know how to point it down to something. I'll have something for you if that's your problem. Spare with me a minute. So you do this assessment, and after you have both done that and both bring a sheet to a 1 hour result talk, I ask the coachee to start. So the coachee guides through their self-assessment. I just listen and ask questions. Then I share where I see things differently and say, hey, here I think I have a different view on that. Here I think I share your view. Here I think like you underestimated yourself completely. So we go and align on our expectation gaps. And it might even take you 1.5 or 2 hours in the beginning, depending on how experienced you are yourself on running this. And then I define 1 to 3 key development areas together. So we say, okay, we have now gaps. Let's see what are the key areas of development you should focus on in order to ramp up your game. Then you gather ideas together, how to improve on these 3 areas and how you as a leader can help them. Is there a course you can pay for them? Is there books you can get for them? Is there peers you can get for them? Is there an excellent mentor or coach you can get for them? Is there like one-on-one input you can help with? Can you organize an internal skill sharing, skill knowledge sharing, whatever? And then I ask them to summarize it. I ask the coachee as a leader and say, can you please send me a short email summary of what we have discussed? Because then I make sure they have understood what I said and we are both aligned. Oftentimes I get the email and I just reply and say, that's perfectly the point. Sometimes I'm just saying, these are the two things I would add to this. I think you forgot that. And then like with this, you make sure you both are on the same line. And then I do check-ins during the one-on-one. So during my one-on-ones with my PMs, I make quick check-ins to see how they're doing on the development, how I can, like what's holding them back, how I can help them further, what they have already achieved. So those are questions. Not every one-on-one, every second one-on-one, maybe I check in that I make sure I can help them. And after 3 to 6 months, I do a formal check-in on this matrix again, where we do basically a reassessment. And if the person levels up to the next level or is aiming to level up, we talk about it and say, okay, in order to level up, those are the 3 areas I want to see most development in. This is how I use it as a coach career development framework or performance management framework. And as a last point, I want to share how you can use it for personal development, which is similar. You first try to understand the expectations of people around you. So if you don't have a leader, either you don't have a product leader at all in your organization because it's still a very early stage startup, or you have a product leader who is so busy and says like, I don't have time for this, you still might want to do it for your own personal development and going up in your like personal career and as a product manager. So try to understand expectations. Ask different people for the different skills and saying, hey, what do you expect here? What do you expect here? What's your expectation here? Understand where you are. Like understand, that's something you would also do in the other approach. It's like I'm not only doing 360 degree as a leader. I always ask my coachees or mentees to do 360 degrees themselves. So I tell them, ask at least one of the developers in your team, ask one peer, and ask one stakeholder for input. I want you to hear feedback from others. I shall not be the only one who is collecting feedback from others, because that, in the best case, someone is so self-reflected that I don't have to add any additional information. They do their job themselves. I only give them the framework. Then you identify your own priorities. How do you do that? Two things. First, you can do it based on your current situation. So in your current role as a PM, you might need to ramp up certain skills, or you can do it based on your long-term goals. So if you want to become a product leader, you might focus on other things. If you want to become an entrepreneur, you might focus on some other skills more than on others. If you want to become more an individual contributor product manager, meaning a principal product manager, for example, and not a product leader, you might also focus on a few skills differently. And I haven't talked about this so far. I think this framework works for both individual contributors and leaders. There are fine nuances. Individual contributors might not pay so much attention to the functional leadership skill, but all other skills are probably very similar for both ICs and product leaders. And then you create your action plan. So similar to the other part, but in this case, you don't have a product leader who helps you. You sit down and think, okay, I know where I am. I know which priorities or what skills I want to improve. Now I want to figure out like how I can improve this. I want to find a peer who can help me. I want to find a course I can take or a book I can read on a specific skill. I want to find opportunities in my day-to-day job, how I can practice the skill more frequently, come up with an action plan, concrete steps you can take to ramp up. So try always to ask yourself, where can I start practicing this skill more? That's number one if you want to get better at a skill. How can you practice it more? Who can help you reflect on your performance? Ask this question like for yourself and say, is there anyone who can help me reflect what I have got better at this? And ask yourself where you can gain some insight, read on that. Sorry for that little typo here. So try to gather those inputs and try to think how you could teach to others. I can tell you learn so much when you start teaching skills to other people. This is actually mastery of skills. So try to find juniors and teach them, maybe guide them through the matrix, start to become a leader, and so on. Reflect. Key. You might be more an audio reflection person or reading reflection or peer reflection, but build your reflection loops. If you're interested in that topic, I have a Medium article also on reflection, self-reflection that you might want to check out, which has quite some inspiration also for product. And last but not least, help maybe others to apply this matrix. So if you teach the matrix, you will learn more about it yourself. Last point for today, as I promised, if you get stuck with a skill and you don't know how to judge your own level on that skill, there is a book for you, which is not easy to get, for your own improvement. A very old book. I got it into my hands a couple of months back, and I was like excited on this book. 450 skills, general business and soft skills, and every skill described on an amazing level of detail. Here I just copy pasted an example from the book on the skill priority setting, which is an important one for PMs, I would say. And it describes how unskilled priority setting looks like, how skilled priority setting looks like, how overuse of that skill look like, some causes. And this is just one page. They have like 3 pages with some scenarios on every skill. It's not a book you read end to end, but it's a book you keep as a leader. And whenever you have the challenge that someone approaches and said like, okay, you told me my communication is not good, but what does this mean? Like, how can I get better in communication? You might be stuck. Then you go to this book and read on communication. And then you analyze and say, good point. Here it says unskilled, skilled. And then you can give them very precise information, like saying, this is why you suck at communication. And here's, by the way, some root causes that might be in your way. And that's the book you can combine with the matrix, and then you have like 2 weapons to be basically equipped for becoming an excellent leader and people manager. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, it's not easy to get a copy of this book. I think there are some digital copies that you could probably get, but it's definitely worth the effort of like looking for it. Cool. Last statement, put your own oxygen mask on first. I stole that from Radical Candor, from Kim Scott. She says, if you want to be a great leader, and I totally agree with this, you need to start with yourself. So maybe a little task for the next couple of weeks, do a self-assessment on the skill matrix, understand where you stand in yourself and where your gaps are. I think there is no product leader that is like exceptional in all skills. Doesn't exist. I find a lot of skills where I'm probably mediocre myself. So, but trying to start with yourself. That's great leadership, leading yourself first. Here are just a few tips of good books on leadership. As I mentioned, Radical Candor. If you're curious about culture and diversity, I recently read the book Culture Map, a fantastic book on like with a lot of concrete actions to understand cultural differences, or particularly as a leader, more concretely. Managing for Happiness, an amazing book with a lot of concrete ideas and practices how to be a more engaging leader. And obviously as a advisor to Bunch AI, I need to promote them. Bunch AI is a 2-minute application that helps young leaders, at this point focused mostly on young leaders, but even I find myself a lot of helpful tips to become a better leader in like 2 minutes a day. The app is for free. Go and check it out and give them some feedback. That's a very cool thing as well. So thank you very much. Feel free to reach out also via LinkedIn if you have further questions. And as I mentioned, I'll publish in the next couple of weeks an article with full access to that skill matrix. And if you want to have it upfront, then I'm happy to provide it earlier than that. Thank you.